The city of Jeddah is preparing for Formula One action this weekend as Saudi Arabia hosts its first-ever Grand Prix. The action on the track will be compelling as Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen lock horns in an incredibly tight race for the Drivers' Championship. Away from the action on circuit, however, concerns over human rights abuses in the country remain a subject of big concern. Hamilton, who is often vocal on social and political issues, called on Formula One to scrutinize Saudi Arabia and Qatar for their human rights records earlier this month. He said, as sports go to these places, they are duty-bound to raise awareness for these issues. These places need scrutiny. Equal rights is a serious issue. I am aware that in this place they are trying to make steps and it can change overnight. Amnesty International has described the human rights situation in both countries as extremely troubling. Last year, when the deal between the sport and the two Middle Eastern countries was announced, Felix Jakens, Amnesty UK's head of campaigns, called for teams and drivers to speak out. He said, the bitter irony over a Saudi Grand Prix is that the very people who fought for the rights of Saudi women to be able to drive are now themselves languishing in jail. Brave people like Lujain Al-Hathlul and Nassima Al-Sada, in the lead-up to the race, were saying to F1 drivers, owners and teams they should brief themselves on the dire human rights situation in the country and be prepared to speak out about the plight of Lujain, Nassima and others. Qatar has been criticized for its restriction on free speech and treatment of migrant workers, especially around the building of stadiums for the 2022 FIFA World Cup. The kafala system, that governed workers' relationships with their employers, was abolished in Qatar in 2016, but the country continues to face condemnation. Saudi Arabia has also been condemned for its use of torture, executions, lack of freedom of expression and its discrimination against homosexuality, women and religious groups. Countries such as Bahrain, China, Russia and the UAE also have a history of hosting Formula One races, despite facing condemnation. Stefano Domenicali, the chief executive of the Formula One Group, defended the sport's decision to race in Saudi Arabia and Qatar earlier this month. He said, such an important change cannot happen overnight. It is a cultural change that will take time. But the timing will be accelerated by the fact big events are there. And Formula One will play an important role in that respect. Labour peer and vice-chairman of the all-party parliamentary group on Formula One, told Express.co.uk recently that the sport needs to have an honest conversation about human rights. He said, every sport has to face its own moral issues in today's world because everything is so transparent, whether it be racing in Saudi Arabia or Bahrain, Russia or China. These issues will be raised whether you are playing football in these countries, boxing in these countries or race in these countries. I don't think sport should duck them. When human rights issues are raised, they should be addressed, and by the leaders of the sport as well. There has been a tendency in the past to deny these issues existed, but now I think an honest conversation about these issues is important. I think Formula One is beginning to have that honest conversation, but I think there's a long way to go.